It started with a whisper inside the encrypted void, a single chat sent through a network that promised total secrecy. For years, Enkro Chat was the Underworld's most trusted sanctuary. Dealers, traffickers, and gun runners used it like a digital fortress, a phone without GPS, no camera, no trace, a lifeline for those who had everything to hide. But in 2020, that silence was shattered. Deep in the south of France, a cybercrime team quietly broke into what the criminal world believed was unbreakable. The French gendarmery's hackers managed to infiltrate Enkro Chat's servers, capturing millions of live messages, conversations happening in real time, between men who thought they were invisible. Within weeks, the data was flowing directly to the UK's National Crime Agency under a covert intelligence project codenamed Operation Venetic. Suddenly, Liverpool, Manchester, and Birmingham, cities that had long battled invisible supply lines of cocaine, heroin, and guns, were under a new kind of surveillance, not through wiretaps or street informants, but through the criminals' own words. Every boast, every emoji, every shipment code was evidence. Some chats were casual drug weights, cash pickups, nicknames like Big Bro or D1. Others were cold and violent. Bring them straps, one message read. Another, big celebration tonight, load in safe. For detectives who'd spent years chasing ghosts, it was like watching a criminal ecosystem come to life in neon detail. At the center of it all, one handle stood out, live long. The messages were arrogant, almost performative. He bragged about moving 200 keys of coke, cash hidden in false walls, and an armory of Glocks and AKs that could take on the feds. Behind that digital persona was Jamie Rothwell, a Salford-born enforcer turned international trafficker, a man whose violence had once defined the 18 wars of Manchester's underworld. As investigators pieced together the chatter, Rothwell's voice, buried in lines of code and encrypted slang, began to reveal itself. Photos attached to chats showed champagne bottles, designer clothes, and a sea view that looked almost Mediterranean. One image in particular, a balcony over the sea with a modern skyline, caught an analyst's attention. Using geolocation, they traced it to a luxury complex in Diagonal Mar, Barcelona. That was their first confirmation. Live Long wasn't just talking big, he was running his empire from Spain. Back in the UK, NCA task forces started to move. Teams in Manchester, Merseyside, and the Midlands began comparing EncroChat logs to old surveillance files. Former rivals, suspected lieutenants, even warehouse workers suddenly had their private words turned into evidence. Every network, every gang, every untouchable now had a digital paper trail. And all of it began with one message. One slip. One encrypted chat that turned a multi-billion-pound criminal network into a domino line of downfall. Because in a world built on silence, even one message can start an earthquake. One message sent from a villa in Barcelona would ignite the downfall of an empire. Salford, Greater Manchester, a city built on grit, loyalty, and a code of silence. For years, its estates were battlegrounds between two factions that defined a generation of violence, the A-Team and the anti-A-Team. Among them was a young enforcer named Jamie Rothwell, broad-shouldered, unflinching, and already learning that in Salford, respect wasn't earned through talk, but through terror. The early 2010s were chaos. Drive-bys, ambushes, and pub brawls marked a silent war that the public barely saw. Rothwell wasn't a leader then, he was muscle. But even then, his instinct for hierarchy and profit set him apart. While others spilled blood for ego, he watched and planned. By 2015, police intelligence reports linked him to weapon caches and taxing operations, a man climbing fast through the ranks of Manchester's underworld. And then he vanished. By 2018, whispers began to circulate through encrypted lines and burner phones. Rothwell had gone international. He'd swapped Salford's cold streets for Spain's Costa del Crime, where exiled gangsters turned villas into boardrooms. There, Behind mirrored sunglasses and a new network of European contacts, Rothwell became something far more dangerous, a broker. Through encrypted messages, investigators later learned that Rothwell was now overseeing shipments of up to 200 kilograms of cocaine, routed through Spain and ferried into the UK via hidden panels and front companies. He no longer pulled triggers, he pulled strings. His new team reflected the evolution of his empire. Craig Mackinson, the planner, calm, methodical, always 3 steps ahead. James Close, the press operator, running a hydraulic workshop that doubled as a drug processing plant. Callum Morris, the weapons man, infamous for posing online with an AK-47. Zach Rock, logistics, the man who could move a crate across borders without leaving a trace. Together, they were Rothwell's clean hands, a network of men who could blend the brutality of street culture with the precision of organized trafficking. On EncroChat, their conversations were almost surreal in confidence. "Makes me hard, bro," Rothwell typed after describing a successful shipment. Another message read, "No stress, the load's safe." Each coded chat, each boast, added another link in the chain of his empire. But the same arrogance that built him was the thread that would undo him. When French investigators infiltrated EncroChat, Rothwell's digital ego became the NCA's goldmine. Analysts matched his messages with financial transfers, GPS data, and even the metadata behind his photos. One image, a simple holiday selfie with a skyline in the background, would become his undoing. The glass towers behind him weren't random. Analysts cross-referenced the reflections, the curvature of the coast, and the position of the sun. It matched Diagonal Mar, Barcelona. Within weeks, British and Spanish intelligence were sharing Rothwell's coordinates. The NCA's Operation Venetic dossier painted him as a Tier 1 international threat. His chats referenced prices, weapons, and debt enforcement in chilling detail, evidence that went far beyond the drug trade. Then before dawn, Spain's elite GEO unit moved in. Cameras later captured the silent sweep through Rothwell's luxury apartment block. The elevator doors opening, shields raised, flashbangs lighting the marble hallway. Inside, Jamie Rothwell was still at the table, halfway through breakfast. A knock, a shout, then glass breaking. Seconds later, he was on the floor handcuffed, surrounded by Spanish commandos, a half-eaten croissant beside his phone. The man who once waged wars in Salford, who built an empire through encrypted boasts, now faced cameras and cuffs. Live long, the kingpin who bragged that no one could touch him, was finally offline. And across Europe, his messages, once his greatest weapon, became the evidence that would end him. When Jamie Rothwell's empire crumbled in Spain, the shockwaves didn't stop at Barcelona. Across the UK, in tower blocks, trap houses, and motorway laybys, other networks began to feel the tremor. One encrypted leak had become a national earthquake. Operation Venetic wasn't designed to take down a single man. It was built to expose the entire ecosystem. Every street runner, every courier, every so-called untouchable who thought encrypted meant invisible. What started with a few decoded messages in Rothwell's chat logs now pointed investigators to dozens of parallel operations, all using the same language, the same codes, and often the same suppliers. The first to fall was Anthony "Scouse Jeff" Fox, a name whispered through Merseyside's Underworld for years. Fox ran a county lines network stretching from Liverpool to Cumbria, a criminal supply chain that turned vulnerable teens into disposable labor. His business model was simple: burner phones, deal lines, and endless intimidation. The texts were short, clinical, and constant. Best gear, same number. Drop ready in barrow, don't be late. Those words, once meaningless chatter, became damning evidence when the NCA mapped his digital footprint back to an EncroChat handle, linked directly to Rothwell's circle. In court documents later unsealed, detectives described a web of teenage couriers, each ferried between towns and hidden in trap houses, rented flats where drugs were stored, repackaged, and sold. Some of the kids were just 15. Most were addicts themselves, trapped in a cycle of fear and dependency. As Rothwell's network collapsed, police were already closing in on Fox. Coordinated dawn raids across Merseyside, Barrow-in-Furness, and Preston uncovered phones, debt lists, and hundreds of wraps of crack cocaine and heroin. Fox's empire folded in days. His coded texts and contacts now evidence exhibits in a growing pile marked Operation Venetic. But it didn't stop there. March 2021, M6 motorway. A silver Vauxhall Astra pulls onto the hard shoulder near Stafford. The driver, Mark Danson, looks calm until officers open the boot. Inside, shopping bags stuffed with 62.5 kilograms of amphetamine, shrink-wrapped and labeled with coded initials. Danson insists it's just supplements, but the phone on his dashboard tells another story, Enkro Chat messages timestamped within minutes of his journey. The meat's in motion, should be there by 8. Investigators decoded meat as amphetamine. His buyer, another Venetic-linked handle traced to the same supply chain that once answered to Rothwell's operation in Spain. The motorway arrest became the perfect visual metaphor for how the digital evidence rippled outward. One villa raid in Barcelona, one phone seized in Liverpool, one stop on the M6. Each small piece connected to a bigger story, a national drug map unraveling in real time. Across the UK, over 700 raids took place under the Venetic banner. Firearms, cash, crypto wallets, designer watches all seized. The numbers were staggering. 2 tons of cocaine removed from circulation. 77 firearms recovered. Over £54 million in assets seized. And behind every statistic, another encrypted message decoded, another self-made boss pulled from his pedestal. For many officers, this was more than policing. It was witnessing an entire generation of gangland mythology implode. The untouchables of EncroChat turned out to be their own worst witnesses. As the NCA's deputy director put it, they thought they were ghosts, but the moment they hit send, they left fingerprints. The montage plays like a modern crime thriller. Bodycam footage from raids, text overlays lighting up against black screens, and voices echoing in courtrooms as judges read out decades-long sentences. But beneath the spectacle, the human cost remains: teenagers drawn into gang lines, families destroyed by addiction, and cities left to pick up the pieces. Rothwell may have fallen first, but his digital empire cast a long shadow, one that reached from Salford to Rotterdam, from Merseyside's backstreets to the M6's cold tarmac. One message, one photo, one mistake, that's all it took. By 2023, the silence inside the courtroom was heavier than any gun or kilo ever moved through Jamie Rothwell's empire. What had begun as encrypted bravado, a flurry of digital code words and laughing emojis, ended here, beneath the flicker of fluorescent lights and the echo of a clerk reading out charges that stretched across pages. But even now, Rothwell tried to hold the mask. During his trial at Manchester Crown Court, he sat stone-faced as prosecutors read out transcripts of his own messages, each one a nail in the coffin of a man who once called himself untouchable. The Enkro Chat leaks had done what rival gangs, police raids, and years on the run never could. They turned his own words into a witness. Then, in a twist no one saw coming, the violence followed him inside. Mid-trial, Rothwell was stabbed in prison, the attack linked to lingering debts and old enemies from Salford's 18 wars. The trial was suspended, the jury discharged, the once defiant trafficker now hospitalized, his empire reduced to headlines and hashtags. When proceedings resumed weeks later, there was no swagger left. No smirk, no bravado, Just a quiet plea guilty to conspiracy to supply cocaine, firearms offenses, and acts of organized violence. His sentence, 43 years. In total, his network received over 200 years behind bars, a generation of dealers, enforcers, and couriers wiped from the streets. Craig Mackinson, James Close, Callum Morris, Zach Rock, all names once whispered with respect, now footnotes in an operation that became one of the National Crime Agency's biggest victories under Operation Venetic. As the final verdicts were read, an NCA spokesperson summed it up with chilling precision. Every message leaves a mark, and that's where we start. Those words became the unofficial tagline of a new era in law enforcement, a reminder that technology had flipped the game. The same encrypted networks that built empires now destroyed them. What criminals once thought of as invisible was, in truth, a perfect archive of their crimes. Every shipment, every threat, every coded phrase preserved like digital DNA. The camera drifts through empty warehouses where drug presses sit cold and rusted. Silent phones light up once, then fade to black. Evidence bags stacked in police vaults. A drone shot over Salford gray skis, the faint hum of traffic where a generation once fought over corners. From a message in Barcelona, to a motorway arrest in Stafford, to a courtroom in Manchester, one network fell and hundreds followed. Encrypted communication promised freedom, privacy, and power. But for Rothwell and countless others, it delivered the opposite: exposure, evidence, and collapse. Technology didn't save them, it documented their every move. The irony is almost poetic. The phones that built their empires became their confession. Static crackles. The EncroChat interface flickers across the screen one last time, messages fading like ghosts. All safe, bro. Big celebration. Don't worry, they'll never find us. Then silence. Do you think encrypted networks will ever truly die, or have they just gone deeper underground? If you found this story compelling, hit subscribe to uncover more hidden worlds of crime, power, and the people who thought they could outsmart justice, only to leave a trail behind.